Misled the cabinet about the legality of war in Iraq. Tony Blair lied about a French veto on a UN military action resolution, and Gordon Brown was complicit in a decision to blame the French. The incendiary evidence to the Chilcot inquiry today by the former International Development Secretary, Clare Short. Ms Short resigned from the government 2 months after the invasion of Iraq, but if she'd known then what she knows now, she'd have gone sooner, she said. Katie Razzle has this report.
She was in the cabinet when Britain invaded Iraq. She voted for the war. But Clare Short's opposition to what happened is well rehearsed. Today, she told the Chilcot inquiry the Attorney General was wrong to tell the cabinet the war was legal.
I think he misled the cabinet. It certainly misled me. For the Attorney General to come and say there's an unequivocal legal authority to go to war was misleading.
Lord Goldsmith's earlier doubts about the legality of war were kept from MPs, but the inquiry has heard both the Attorney-General himself and Tony Blair say the Cabinet was given the chance to question Lord Goldsmith when, 3 days before the invasion, he gave them his decision.
That is untrue. I said, well, that's extraordinary. Why is it so late? Did you change your mind? And they all said, Clare, stop. I mean, everything was very fraught by then, and they didn't want me arguing, and I was kind of jeered at to be quiet, and that's what happened.
So you went quiet?
Well, if he won't answer and the Prime Minister's saying be quiet and that's it, no discussion, there's only so much you can do.
Clare Short blamed in part a presidential style of government in which Tony Blair and those she termed his mates made decisions in secret with no checks in place and no discussion in Cabinet.
What we had at Cabinet were little chats. They weren't decision-making meetings. So Tony would say, well, Jack, you've been to see Colin Powell, and that had all been in the press anyway. Why don't you tell us how the meeting went? So Jack would make a few jokes, as he does, and so on.
Tony Blair was given short shrift today, a poodle to America, a man Miss Short believes lent on the Attorney-General to get his way. That despite both men's denials to the contrary.
No.
She said she wished she'd known of the Foreign Office lawyer's views that war was illegal. This afternoon, the inquiry picked up that thread with an FCO official of the time.
In your 3.5 years as Permanent Under-Secretary, can you recall any occasions on which the Foreign Secretary has rejected the advice of the FCO's legal advisers?
No.
Or the Attorney-General?
No.
OK, moving on.
Today, though, was the Clare Short roadshow, an insight into the months and days before war from someone whose position as Secretary of State for International Development put her at the heart of government, but whose well-known resistance to war without UN backing saw her sidelined by the power brokers.
On Iraq, I believe the prevailing mood of the British people is sound.
There have been charges of hypocrisy. Robin Cook, then Leader of the Commons, resigned on the eve of war. Miss Short didn't. She said she'd booked her resignation placed with the Speaker of the House, but was persuaded to stay with promises of American backing for the Middle East peace process and UN responsibility for post-war Iraq. She resigned 2 months later.
You don't want to disbelieve your Prime Minister in the run-up to a war, and you don't want to disbelieve the leader of your party. And you want to be loyal. I mean, I did believe them too often, I think.
During almost 3 hours of questioning, Clare Short more than hinted at the fractured relations between Number 10 and Number 11. Gordon Brown was on board after the invasion, she said, happy to join the Prime Minister in blaming the French for the failed UN route. But earlier it had been different.
Was this period of standoff? Gordon Brown was pushed out and marginalised at the time. And having cups of coffee with me and saying Tony Blair's obsessed with his legacy and he thinks he can have a quick war and then a reshuffle, etc.
Previously classified letters from Miss Short to the Prime Minister were released today, revealing her concerns about the lack of post-war planning. She told the inquiry the war should have been delayed.
We'd expect the military in the first instance to make sure people were fed and to keep order. And like our military, the week they went, were ordering food. It was all done on a wing and a prayer. I mean, it was incredible.
With almost 7 years, a book and countless interviews behind her, this was a chance for Clare Short to set the record straight in a more formal environment, and she was characteristically vehement. She says she was conned by a Prime Minister more interested in legacy than legality. She hit back at the military, who she says failed in their duty to the Iraqi people. And she painted a picture of the frantic run-up to war.
So thank you all very much.
Ms Short divides opinion. But as she finished her testimony, there was applause for only the second time since the inquiry began.
Katie Russell reports.